This is Hot Take Cinema, where I watch movies and I talk about them shortly after watching them. And today we're talking about Joker. Joker, directed by Todd Phillips, an interesting filmmaker. Because I watched the first movie of his I saw was The Hangover, and then I saw that he directed other like for hire hack type of movies like Old School, and there's some other stuff as well. But the point being is that he's turned into one of the more interesting people, I think, making movies. And you saw that in War Dogs. There's like some Lars von Trier kind of stuff going on in there, but that's another subject for another time. But Todd Phillips, my favorite movie of his, it was his first movie. It was the documentary he did about GG Allin. Now, I think that in and of itself is a talent where you could befriend somebody like GG Allin and make a movie about him, and then, and he actually approved of the movie. GG Allin reportedly actually liked the movie a lot. But if you don't know who GG Allin is somebody who I've been long fascinated by. So I got a little bit of his biographical details right here. It says, so Allin was born Jesus Christ Allin at Weeks Memorial Hospital in Lancaster, New Hampshire. The younger of two sons born to Merle Colby Allin Sr. and Arletta Gunther. He was given the name because his father told his wife that Jesus Christ had visited him and told him that his newborn son would be a great man in the vein of the Messiah. During early childhood, Allen's older brother Merle was unable to pronounce Jesus properly and called him Gigi, which became, shortened for the two letters, Gigi. So, this is one of the most depraved movies ever made. It's called Hated, Gigi Allin and the Murder Junkies. It's about an hour long. I believe you can find it on the internet. I found a Spanish subtitled version, but it's still all in English. You can understand it if you can understand me. There's an interesting scene in Hated where Todd Phillips goes to his old hometown in New Hampshire and talks to some people that he knew and was friends with, talked to some of his former teachers. And GG Allin was a weirdo despite his handicap, I guess, the bad hand he was dealt, being birthed to an insane man who thought his child would be like the Messiah. But Gigi in high school, he's kind of weird, but somebody definitely redeemable. And his friends, he talks to like a group of 3 or 4 of his old high school buddies, and they're all pretty normal. And they're talking about like, yeah, Gigi, he was normal before, but then we gave him acid, and then he was never the same. Those men put GG Allin there. And GG Allin was the most depraved musician, whatever you want to call him, that you could, if you were to put all the worst traits of a person into a person, it would be GG Allin. And so that moment derailed his whole life, and here are his buddies, his high school friends, they're just laughing about it. But they, in part, put him there. Now, he's already working with a rigged deck. Gigi was in life due to the circumstances of his birth. And these guys, even if they didn't mean to put him there, where he ended up, they had a part in that. They had a part in forming this man who became known for performing nude, cutting himself on stage, taking laxatives, shitting on stage, and throwing it at the audience. All of which is documented on film in the documentary Hated. I give Todd Phillips a lot of credit for expanding, going to making these hack comedies and just doing that basically any sort of managerial type can do. Because most movies, including our current most beloved kind of movies, are made by these people. They're managers, they're not artists. They're just going to do what corporate tells them to do. Whereas any sort of artistry or technical ability that you see is all done by contractors. It's all done by computer artists. It's all done by cinematographers, but the director is the one who is managing. They're getting things done through others. That's what they'll say. So I give Todd Phillips credit for going from making hack comedies like The Hangover and Old School. I'm not saying I don't like those movies; they're entertaining. But it was around The Hangover 2 where I'm realizing, like, wait, there's something going on here. I think he's tired of this crap. And then I think Todd Phillips is Jewish himself, but War Dogs had some rather overt anti-Semitism in it, and so does the Joker. Well, not so overt, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Just an interesting theme, not necessarily the point I'm trying to make here. But it said that whether you're an author, a musician, a poet, whatever kind of creative force you are, people say you just kind of do the same stories over and over again. And if you compare The Hangover to the Joker, no, not at all. Maybe if you compare like The Hangover 2 to the Joker, maybe you'd have a point. But I definitely saw a lot of the common themes between Hated and the Joker. Both deal with characters, one being fictional, one being real, who have been born into very, very poor circumstances, where they already don't have as good of a chance to turn out okay as the rest of us. But if I may finish that thought about The Hangover 2, Part 2, at that point you realize that maybe the guy behind this is starting to realize what this is all about, how people just want to keep you stereotyped and within these very limited parameters. Because The Hangover 2 is just like the first one, but that would be how it would actually go. Your buddy would get raped by a transsexual hooker. Your soon-to-be brother-in-law is going to get his finger chopped off. All this horrible stuff that would actually happen in those circumstances. So that was just my thought. That's an interesting movie on the meta level. But the Joker. A lot of people have been angry about this movie, saying it's going to inspire shootings and all this, and we have to look at this in context of Joe Blow, public idiot, moron, who just consumes this crap reflexively. This is not your typical superhero, supervillain movie. This is a true blue character study, which I haven't seen in a mainstream movie in forever. I really haven't. And I do think that great art should make you feel uncomfortable in a certain way. In any way, really. So you have all these people about the Joker saying, it's going to inspire shootings like at Aurora, and it's going to inspire an incel uprising, or whatever, buzzword that these people learned 3 months ago. Whatever they can apply to it. I've heard of that thing recently. Therefore, it's that thing. It's going to be that thing. Which makes you realize just how short-sighted and... Yeah, I thought society was trending towards more OCD tendencies than ADD tendencies, but I think I was wrong about that because nobody has any attention span anymore or even a memory. Where it's like, oh, this weirdo, he's an incel. Reddit taught me that word. Well, where does this anxiety come from over a movie? Well, I think this movie touched upon something that people want to ignore. Joker, of course, coming from the Batman milieu. Batman, of course, being one of America's beloved superheroes. And you do see a young Batman in this a little bit, but not a whole lot. Where do superheroes come from? Why are they necessary? Well, because there's a villain. But where do the villains come from? Well, in this movie, Cesis, they come from us. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, we start off the movie, Joker, Joaquin Phoenix, whatever you want to call him. He's spinning a sign, and everything must go sign. He gets jumped by some Hispanic kids. He's like, hey, wait, give me back my sign. He's running after them, and then they bash him with the sign, breaking it. And why he's working that job, he's dressed as a clown. And he works for some clown agency. Interesting, right? And they're all men working for it. Which is funny because that's all men have been reduced to anymore. But despite that, Joker, whatever, I forgot his name. We're just gonna call him that. He's not the Joker at this point. It's a movie more about how he becomes Joker. He still finds some kind of satisfaction and contentment in his job. He does. And he goes home and he takes care of his mother, who's a crazy person. But he finds contentment in that. And he's got problems and he has to go to social services. But one of his coworkers like, we heard you got jumped. Here's a gun. Joker brings a gun with him to a children's hospital. He's dancing for the kids in his clown suit. The gun falls on the floor, they fire him. And then there's another scene where his boss is all like, oh, the guy complained that you stole his sign. Joker says, I got jumped. He's like, bullshit, just give him back his sign. People don't jump you for a sign. And then he's like, I don't have the sign. Why would I have the sign? Why would I take it? The boss directly contradicts himself and says, I don't know, why people do weird things. And then you find out that Joker's mom had some kind of involvement with Batman's dad. She got pumped and dumped by Batman's dad, which would lead the Joker to believe like, oh, that's my dad. And he confronts him about it, eventually gets punched in the face by him. And of course, you do end up finding out that, his true parentage is not that of the Wayne family, but it's no less tragic. And he takes care of his mom. He's not a bad person, just a little nuts. But, then some yuppies who work for Batman's dad, they beat him up on a train, and Joker ends up killing those 3 guys. And then the guy, then it inspires Batman's dad to run for public office. We need to protect these people. These do-nothing yuppies. We need to protect them. And where this movie departs from something that's real is that these killings inspire, an Occupy Wall Street kind of thing where everybody's wearing clown masks and, they identify with the guy that killed these rich pieces of shit. Which it's not the case. The fact that Americans love superhero movies so goddamn much, it's proof that we do still identify with the oligarchs and the industrialists. The people who get things done through others. Which is to say you do nothing other than assume the financial risk. But the Joker, he seems to be a good son to his mom. And then he finds out what sort of led to her institutionalization and all this horrible stuff is that she was rather abusive to him as a child. So here he is thinking that she's a victim when she is in some way. She was sexually used by an industrialist. Which, I watched this documentary recently called Lost in Middle America. It's a documentary done in 1999 about Lima, Ohio. Worth a watch. Look it up. It is on this platform for now. But it reminds me of all these Midwestern towns. Like Gary, Indiana. You can blame their problems on demographics, but who put them there? And who left them there? This town was built up because we put the people who constructed it put their faith in man. They put their faith in these industrialists to give ordinary people a means of living, a means of having a fulfilling life. And then what? Oh, profits are down a little bit. Let's move. Let's close down the refineries and factories because reasons. And what do they leave? They leave blight. They're the ones who put that specific demographic there. So I saw that a little bit in the Batman's dad and Joker's mom, I guess, subplot. Or detail, really. Not so much a subplot. I don't know the difference, but work with me. And at the end of the movie, you see Batman and his family coming out of a movie theater that's showing Zorro, the Gay Blade. Modern equivalent would be those middle-class parents in Kansas who pack a library to enjoy a convicted sex offender story hour. That would be the modern equivalent there. And that's where, one of the protesters ends up killing Batman's dad, and the movie ends shortly after that. It doesn't end there, but that's what happens. Point being, the source of superheroes and the target of their protection, it's always well-to-do people. That's their origin. And who do they defend? They defend the people who create the villains. You see, we have this dumb notion that the haves and have-nots, they are where they are because of work. We're very uncomfortable with the idea of somebody at the fringes of society who has nothing to lose, who doesn't value their freedom for probably a good reason, so much that they're willing to murder people. That a life in prison or a life ended by lethal injection or the electric chair is much more preferable to the one they have. Who puts them there? It's the same people that heroes are trying to protect. Or hell, it's the heroes putting them there. The people who think, oh, they're decent, hard-working family men. We don't know who they've treated like dirt. So I don't know if I would call Joker great art, but it was definitely good. Good enough to make people who should feel uncomfortable uncomfortable. The people who were bitching about this movie, they're like the radio show host, the morning drive commute show host, who can have that kind of personality where they're all bright, they're talking fast, and they sound all cheerful at 5 in the goddamn morning. The golden retrievers of our world who can't fathom that things are bad sometimes. That hatred comes from a place that's real and earned. That's sincere. If you've never had to hate anybody, your life has been a bowl of cherries. If you've never been tempted in the ways that Joker was tempted, you're not worth listening to. Yet those are the people that heroes defend. They defend the yuppies on the train, harassing some poor clown. They defend the radio show host, who's like, we need hate speech legislation. Why? It's never right to hate. Well, have you ever been in that situation? Where you've been deprived of something through no fault of your own? Where somebody has taken something from you? With no legitimate reason? Men get the reputation as the angrier, less sensitive sex. Well, it's true that men have more power to maim than the average woman. That's just on the bodily level. Not some paragon of the human species by any means, but Louis C.K. had a great point in one of his stand-up specials, where he says, man will break your legs, but he'll leave you a whole person, but a woman will shit on your soul. something along those lines. And it's not just women, it is society in general. It is the hive mind. That has the power to maim a soul, whereas I don't think men have that as much. Yeah, we don't tell people, take care of somebody's soul. Don't make them feel like that. where killing and going to jail for the rest of your life is a better option than what you have now. Because let me tell you something, I understand why people do it. I don't agree with it and I don't approve of it. But I have enough of a soul left to sympathize with somebody who has nothing left. There are so many sheltered people, at least in America, that cannot fathom that. They cannot fathom that somebody is on the complete outskirts. The outskirts of everything where they would find that a palatable alternative. So they just like, I don't know why they did it. It must be the gun's fault. And all Joker wants to do is, advance himself from a for-hire clown to a stand-up comedian. And he's at clubs and he just sees Jewish comedians, and they do mention that. That's not me projecting. Just talking about filth. They're just talking about like, oh, I role play with my wife, the professor and the student, and it's sex and blah, 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 my dick. Just jokes like that. That's what you have to contend with because that's what people want. As evidenced by the success of those hangover movies. He just wants to take care of his mom, work a job that he likes, until he finds out that, well, his mom's a piece of shit too. Bruce Wayne's dad's a piece of shit. Everybody. The last superhero movie I saw was Black Panther, and I wish it would have went like full radical politics, because at least I would have remembered that. But that's the thing with superheroes. They represent nothing. They just defend the yuppies on the train, who find it prudent to harass the have-nots. And don't tell me it doesn't happen in real life, because you know it does. You know it does. There's a lot of sheltered people in the world, not just in America, but since that's where I live, that's where I'm going to go. Years ago, it was at Christmas time, and, there's some European exchange students there for some reason. And they're like, why can't you just shoot somebody in the leg? It's like, do you not understand the situations that are life and limb? You don't really have that luxury. Again, sheltered people who just don't realize that there are some very, very bad people out there, and the very, very bad people aren't easily recognized as such. Again, they're usually the people that become superheroes or that are defended by them. So when I was watching this, I couldn't understand the controversy because I obviously saw it pretty recently and it's been out for a while at this point. When I was watching, I'm like, how could anybody get angry at this or be scared by it if they themselves weren't like the people who are really worthy of no sympathy? You ever listen to those morning radio shows, by the way? Where I can't stand it. I'm up at 4 a.m. I'm in the traffic in the pouring rain, and these people are cackling away. Like, without a care in the world. That's what people want to hear when they wake up? I don't understand it. And those are the kinds of people I think were most freaked out by this movie. The people who cannot fathom the darker parts of the soul. They just think it happens at random, where that part of the soul proliferates. Again, people are very uncomfortable with the idea that you can't work towards something, that you can't work your way out of something. In most cases, you can't. If you're in a bad place, somebody more often than not put you there. The Joker is not a real person. This is not a real movie. But GG Allin was a real person. And the things that happened to him were very similar. So Joker is a radically different movie from what Todd Phillips had done before. Unless you go back to his very first movie, but then you'll find two very, very similar characters. And another thing about this movie, I don't know if this is intentional, but the Joker seems to improve in his demeanor and his lucidity as he can no longer get meds from the the municipal mental health department. I don't know if that was intentional, but I think that's a judgment call because that's just what I got from it. Because anybody who's looked into it knows the damaging effects that SSRIs can have on the mind. I don't know. That's just that's an aside. It's not something I can really expand upon. But man, the fact that this movie got all the controversy it did is really, really disturbing, more so than the movie itself. Are we losing our ability to put ourselves in the shoes of other people? Are we afraid to find out that we are more like them than we would care to admit? You know, it's like only genuine sociopaths are people that I would call evil. People who just do things at random because they lack that about themselves. You would find that most people who you would consider undesirable and who need to be locked up, maybe they were put there more often than not, rather than it being something that they worked at. That should be what disturbs people. Is our complete lack of empathy. Or at least our, not complete lack, but a declining sense of it. Just a thought. Just a hot take.